So you're out and about and you're looking for a custom home builder and you're interviewing a couple, 2 or 3 of them, and you're talking to one, showing them pictures, and they're saying this house is going to cost about X. And these builders over here are going to say, I think that house is going to cost, and it's going to be a different number. Why is that? Well, let me help you understand what is typically included in the cost of a custom home and those things that are not included in the cost of a custom home. So let's start with what builders are typically going to include in your house, right? They're typically going to include the foundations, the concrete for your footings, for your walls, your wood package, your framing package. All of the things that go into the structure of the house are going to be fairly common. Yes, there's going to be some differences between builders, but fairly common that there's going to be straightforward. Your roof, your roofing material. Again, all of those things between builders are going to be fairly common. So builders are also going to include core systems, your plumbing, your your heating and cooling system, your electrical system. Those are also going to be included because they're pretty standard in a building. But what about flooring? What about tile? What about cabinets? What about countertops? All of those finished things. Not every builder approaches those the same way. Some builders are going to exclude those costs, and they're going to ask you as the client to go shopping for them, pick them out, pay for them yourself, and then that builder is going to install them. Other builders might give you allowances, and those allowances can be tricky. And let me go a little bit more detail into what an allowance is. Allowances, think of them as a budget placeholder. That's really the best way to think about it, a budget placeholder. They are a number that we're going to put in the budget based on the builder's projected finish of you as the client. Now, those allowances might be high, those allowances might be low, because an allowance isn't really picking out a thing. We're not saying this is exactly the appliance that we're going to install in your house. Instead, you're going to be talking to us and we're going to listen and say, oh, you're thinking of a GE, or you're thinking of a Thermador, or you're thinking of a Wolf, and we will budget accordingly and create an allowance. Again, you're going to hear the word allowance. When you hear that, think about budget placeholder. Sometimes you're going to have that allowance item or budget placeholder from one builder, and it's going to be very different than it will be with another builder. And there are questions that you have to ask about that, because that allowance typically, remember on those appliances, it's going to be conceptual. You're not going to have part numbers in there. So ask your builder, on my allowance for appliances, what appliances are you thinking? What type of floor do you have in my allowance? Because what you don't want to have happen is thinking that this builder who has a lower price actually just pushed those allowances artificially down so they have a lower starting point for the contract, so it feels like they're the right builder to go with. I'm sad to report that there are some builders out there who do that. The vast majority of builders don't. But here at Choice Builders, we pride ourselves in not only our integrity, but really listening to you and understanding exactly what you want. So we get that Wolf, if that's what you want, that's what's in your allowance. Again, budget placeholder, really important that you think about it that way. All right, so how do allowances work? Let me give you an example. Let's talk about flooring. And as we're talking, you're saying, I want wood floors and I want tile in the bathrooms and maybe some carpet in the bedrooms, right? And I'm going to be listening and writing all of that down. And as we're designing your house, I'm going to get a feel for the level of finish that you want. And I'm going to estimate that by going to the tile store, the carpet store, the wood store, talking to the installer and putting in the right number that I think is going to be pretty close to the products that you're going to pick. But it's not exact, right? It's a budget placeholder. Now, when you go out to purchase those, you may choose a flooring. Let's say I put in engineered hardwood, but you decided that you want to have a true solid hardwood floor. That's going to have a much different price point than the engineered hardwood floor that we may have been talking about at the very beginning. That's okay. You can go over on your allowance. You're going to have to pay the difference to the contractor from the base allowance to where you went to, right? You just increased your budget. But you can offset that. Here's another way that you can use an allowance. Say that flooring was very important to you, but the tile in the guest bathroom, maybe it's not so important to you. So maybe you pick a tile and go with a simple pattern, so the cost of that installation in your guest bathroom is less than your allowance or your budget placeholder. So now you're equalizing those two out. You've picked a really nice floor that you wanted in the main area and a simpler tile in the secondary spaces, and you stayed on budget. There's also a third way that you can do this, is you can go and you can pick that flooring for your main space, you can pick the knock your socks off tile pattern for your master suite, and you can really go over budget. As long as you're doing it eyes open and you understand where you are, that's the important thing. And we have a video that talks about allowances in detail and those sorts of decisions. I encourage you to go check it out. Right, so when you're talking to the builder and you're interviewing them, really, you got to ask them, how do you treat those allowances? What happens when I go over on allowance? What happens when I go under on allowance? What happens if some of my allowance items are under and over? How do I know what's going to be included? Are you going to give me specifications, or are you going to give me the types of material that's included in the allowance? Those are very important questions that you need to ask your builder as you're talking to them.